Hello and welcome. If you guys are joining us this Saturday, it's Saturday afternoon where I am in Budapest, and today I have a fun lesson for you. It is called IELTS Speaking Tips. So if you're not taking the IELTS or have no idea what the IELTS is, do not worry. I will let you know. And this lesson is not just about the IELTS, speaking tips about the IELTS, but it's also about general speaking tips. So let me begin. If you guys are just joining us, welcome. Let us know where you're from, where you're writing from, what's your name. We're always glad to have our students join us. Hi, Marco. Welcome. Welcome to our lesson. Hello, Patricia. Welcome. So today we're talking about the IELTS and general speaking tips. Hi, Russia. So if you guys are joining us, please make sure to tell us how are you doing? How are you feeling today? Do you know what the IELTS is? Have you ever had to take an English test before? So I'll repeat some of these questions in a second. So ta-da! That is our topic today. The IELTS speaking tips. And IELTS is an English test. If you are wondering what is going on, what is the IELTS? If you've never heard about it, then now you know. It assesses your English proficiency. So I am not a singer. Because of my microphone. No, it really helps with the voice. So again, if you guys are joining us, let us know where you're writing from, what you're doing, how are you doing, and if you know what the IELTS is. And if you don't know, have you ever had to take an English proficiency test or any kind of language test? So the IELTS is, I'm going to say this really fast, the International English Language, I couldn't say it fast, sorry. It's the International English Language Testing System. And what it is, it just really tests your English level. It's like the title says, it's international. So if you need to somehow prove that your English is at a certain level, many employers will ask their employees to take this test. Students sometimes have to take this test for admission in university. It's very esteemed. Everyone it's kind of a standard test. Everyone really respects the scores from an IELTS test, and other tests that you may have heard about that are kind of similar to the IELTS are the American TOEFL or the TOEIC. These are similar tests. The TOEFL is very similar, except it's more of an American test. IELTS is more British and Australian accents, but everyone can take it, and you can use any kind of accent you want. So you can use an American accent if you'd like. So again, welcome. Are you guys, my question for you today is, have you ever had to take an English test? And if you have, what was it? Have you ever had to take the IELTS? And if yes, how did you do? How did it go? And if no, would you be interested in taking one? Okay, so please let us know in the comments. I'm very curious. Hello, if you're just joining us again, let us know where you're from and what's your name. And it's always exciting to see all these countries. Oh my gosh, Egypt, Philippines, Brazil, France, Indonesia, wonderful. So it's really great to have you guys. So this IELTS test, it's not an easy test, I wouldn't say, but I think it is fairly accurate in assessing your English. But the reason why I'm going to explain this in a second, who this lesson is for, it's not just for IELTS speakers, because the test really assesses your speaking, your listening, your reading, and your writing. So all 4 skills. It really does a good job, I think, at assessing this. So if you want to improve your general English, especially your speaking today, I have some good tips and also some test taking skills. So it's kind of in the middle. Okay, so yeah, you guys have been taking some of the tests. Fabio, I think it is a little difficult. But just like any other test, the more you prepare for it, the better you will be. I think it does a good job at assessing the language, but I think there are some tricks. And if you're taking the TOEFL, there are pros and cons against between the IELTS and the TOEFL. Some people like to speak to a person, and that's the main difference between the IELTS and the TOEFL, are speaking to a person versus speaking to a computer. I think they're very similar, so I wouldn't say one is easier than the other. I think it depends on if you're more nervous when you speak in front of the person, then it's probably easier to take the TOEFL because you speak in front of a computer. But if you're more of a people person and enjoy speaking to a person, then it might be easier to take the IELTS. And it's also about the listening. Whichever accent you find easier. The TOEFL is an American accent and IELTS is an English accent for the listening parts. So whichever you're more used to, that might be easier for you. Okay, so who is this lesson for? This lesson is for anyone taking the test, obviously. If you're taking any other kind of test, because these tips apply to everyone who is preparing for any kind of English test. If you want to improve your speaking skills, please keep watching, because I have some tips on how to improve communication or even your presentation skills in English. Tips for writing. Yes, I will talk. I think I'm going to have a lesson on writing tips later on. You'll be surprised because some of the writing tips in English apply very well. Some of the speaking skills in English apply very well to writing, because they're English speaking and writing in English are very similar. They follow patterns and they follow rules. So if you keep listening, you're going to find out some really helpful tips. Okay, so my first tip for today is be prepared. And this should be the first tip for any kind of test ever that you're ever going to take. So please always prepare. I've heard stories. I've had a lot of students who have taken these tests, and they just went there and they had no idea what to expect. Don't do that. Please research what your test is, how much time you have for each of these, what to take with you. Can you take a pencil? Can you bring a watch? Because, for example, for IELTS, you cannot bring a watch. So all of these, please make sure to research ahead of time. Now, for the speaking test, here there are 3 parts to it, and it's a total of 11 to 14 minutes usually, and the topics are very common. They're just things like work, education, communication, computers, internet, childhood, food, happiness, flowers. They're just very, very random topics. They're very common topics, but there are topics that sometimes you may not expect, because it can be anything, art, literally anything. So you have to be very prepared. And you have to know what the examiner is looking for, because they're looking for specific answers for specific triggers that we're going to talk about. So for that, I would say read example answers. The internet has so many good resources for this, where you can type in and see some of the topics that are out there, and then you can just read the topic and how somebody would answer. That will help you very much in trying to come up with a good answer. And of course, practice a lot. And you can practice with online prompts. Like I said, you can find, if you type in IELTS speaking prompts, you can find a lot online. And my suggestion would be to print out a list, just print it out and then cut it with scissors. And you have these small strips of paper with the topics on them, and fold them and put them in a cup. And then a way to test yourself would be to just take one and then just speak. Because if you have them all on one paper, I think it makes it easier, and you don't want to make it easy on yourself. You want to create as close of a test environment as you can, because that way you become more prepared. So again, we are talking about how to prepare for the IELTS or for any English speaking test. So if you guys are just joining us, that's what we're doing. Please, if you just join their conversation, write your name, where are you coming from, because it's really nice for us to see and for everyone to just kind of get to know you. So we're talking about how to be prepared. There are many ways to do it, like going online and finding good information. I would say to use, if you're going to go online, to make sure that you're using sources or resources that are reputable. For example, one that I found that I really like, that I'm going to leave in the description, is IELTSLiz.com. It's a very good and useful one. It has very current topics. So if you're wondering like what were the more recent topics of conversation, you can have them there. At least for speaking, I found that it was very useful. Now be careful. There is a lot of bad advice online. I've noticed a lot of bad answers and a lot of bad advice. So don't use it just because somebody has been to the exam. It doesn't mean that they have good answers or know what is the good answer. So please use reputable sources when you're training. If you really want to be very serious about it and you want to buy a book, use the one from Cambridge, because that's who makes the test. And make sure to use really good material. So something that is you put there by a teacher, not by some other student, and make sure that they know what they're talking about. Very important. Okay. And the last tip in order to be prepared is to time yourself. I've done this to students many times, and sometimes it's actually very difficult because when you time somebody, they think, oh, I have so much to say about this topic, so much. And then the problem is there are different time limits. So sometimes you don't have as much as you think, and then you only speak for 45 seconds, and when you have to speak for a minute and a half, and that's a problem, because when you don't speak enough, the person, the examiner, is going to think you don't have enough to say. But again, this is applicable to generally to testing yourself, is to see how prepared you are, and it will help you kind of get better at elaborating on a topic, which is very useful. Now, this tip number 2, I really like this one because I love writing in English, and it's similar to writing. This is how when speaking is similar to writing. And this is when English is different than other languages. So I'll say this. English is different. So when you speak in English, especially for an exam, but in general, when you have to have a presentation, when you have to give some kind of official speech, any answer that you have to give in a debate, for example, or anything like that, you have to follow a structure in English. And it's the same with writing. I know in many other cultures, many times you don't immediately say the main idea or the conclusion that you want to get to. I know that's true, but in English you have to. You have to immediately state your opinion, you immediately state the answer to your question, and then back it up with examples. Very, 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 very important. Okay, so you have to make sure that you follow this rule. First, you state your idea, then you give examples. And this goes for any answer that you have. And the more examples, the better. But please don't go off topic. In English, I will say for an answer to be relevant and good, you can any one of your sentences has to be related to your main idea. If you're talking about something completely different and it's not directly related to your main idea, it's not relevant, and it signals like, oh, this person is kind of ranting. They're just talking about something else. So make sure you stick with the structure. It's very important and very useful. And again, this is useful not just for the IELTS, but for any kind of other presentation you have. in English, or any other kind of answer that you have to give or that you have to elaborate on. Welcome everyone again. Today we're talking about speaking tips for the IELTS. So if you're taking the IELTS, please watch this. These are very useful, I believe, but not just for the IELTS in general for improving your speaking skills in English. And this is another really good one. Stay current. So what do I mean by stay current? I mean, read newspapers, watch the news, do anything you can to stay informed. And the reason for this, I have so many reasons why you should be doing this. Of course, I mean in English. Why should you do this? Because as I wrote here, you need examples. So whenever, like I just talked in the previous point where you have to give your main idea and then you have examples, some of these topics are going to be about things like space exploration or technology, or they're going to be topics that you may not be as familiar with as you'd think. So you need, when you're watching the news and you just kind of try to stay informed, you get ideas, you get examples, and you can use all of these examples when you speak, in your question, in your answer. So not only you have things to talk about when you stay current, but also your vocabulary will improve. So the more you hear, the more you listen, the more you read, the more you find out or pay attention to the world around you in English, the better your vocabulary will become. And also, you will have more topics of discussion, and this is the same for the writing section of the test. You always have to have ideas. You always have to have examples, and this is a great way to get examples and ideas by just reading the news, being informed, and it will help you improve your vocabulary as well. Okay, so my fourth tip: use good English. And what do I mean by use good English? There are many things that I mean by good English, so I'm going to start with the first one, which is don't be too informal. So in order to, when you go to any kind of a speaking exam, it's a speaking exam, so you're welcome to use a little bit more of an informal language than you would writing. But don't go in there saying, "Hey buddy, I know this may sound like, oh, of course but I've had students that I've known who, because when they're learning so much of the colloquial English, so you have to make sure that you're able to separate the formal and informal contexts. So make sure that you're not too informal, that it's just like an interview, but don't overdo it. Don't be too informal. My second tip under this category is to vary your sentences. Oh my gosh, this is so important. When you speak English well, any native English speaker, we use complex sentences. You use simple sentences and complex all together. You use transition words, which I've also put here. So you have to be able to use a variety of these mixed up. Synonyms are super important. We have, I don't know if you guys have seen, but if you haven't, you should check out some of our synonym videos. So we have good words, bad words, happy words, and academic words. These are all synonyms that are very helpful. They're academic, and you should use them instead of words like good or bad, because it will automatically make you sound a lot more advanced in your English. And if you have to prove to anyone that your English is advanced, it is now. It would be this time when you have to show that you know that you are advanced, that your proficiency is very high, that you can use all of these words and you can use complex grammar structures, and this would be the time to do it. So again, if you guys are just joining, welcome. Thank you. Have you ever taken the IELTS is the question of the day. If you have, how did you do? If you haven't, have you taken any other tests, or do you think you're going to take these? It's very interesting for us to know. Okay. So I said to use idioms because idioms, when you use them, you show that you have a high proficiency or high understanding of the language and how it's used in the local context. But I would say not to use too many idioms, like don't use one per sentence, because you may sound, it sounds a little awkward. So idioms are used, but they're used sparingly. They're not used very, very often. So make sure that to know that you're okay, you can use them, but just don't overuse them. So don't try to show off too much with your knowledge. It's very important. Okay, let's see. Aimano says, I'm afraid of the TOEFL exam. What can I do? I would suggest you to be prepared. The more you prepared, the more you will become confident and the better you will be at speaking. So prepare by speaking. Read those topics out loud. Practice with a friend if you have one that is willing to listen to you. Test yourself, time yourself, make sure that you know everything there is to know about the exam. So that's I think the most important tip is just be prepared. The more you practice something, the better you become at it. And that's just true for anything. Okay. And the last tip I have for you guys today are some things to keep in mind. My first one is use your voice. And I don't mean like speak. By voice, I mean your individual voice. Make sure, be yourself. Speak like you would. Don't try to sound too scriptive or too robotic, or because your intonation, it will just not sound natural. So just be yourself, speak. Don't worry about it too much, but be prepared because it will come natural to you once you're prepared. Now, the second one is be confident. And confidence comes with being prepared. So that's why I said very important. The topics that you can find online, just topics, and I'll show you, I actually have an example here. Actually, I can just show it to you guys. So this is one of the topics and what it looks like, where it says, describe a piece of advice you recently received. The topics are very, very random, but they tend to come up again and again and again. So if you know what the topics are and what people could ask you, the more you practice, the more you will know kind of what to answer. So it's very important that you practice, and then your confidence will come and you'll be able to express yourself. And when you are confident, you sound like you're doing better. So I cannot tell you how many students I've had that their English was pretty high, but their confidence was really low. And when they spoke, because they were a little afraid of speaking, I thought they were a much lower level. And you remember, you only have a few minutes with this person. Make them count. Please, please, please be confident. Prepare, and you will do wonderful. And my last tip is think fast. You have to think fast. Like this one here. Describe a piece of advice you recently received. You should say when this happened, who gave you the advice, what the advice was, how you felt about the advice. Oh my God, what if you can't think of any advice? When was I last given advice? Like, I don't know. I haven't thought about advice. So maybe like all these things are going on through your head. You cannot change topics. So you have to choose the topic that is being given to you. So what do? Well, you can do a couple things. Just think really fast. If nothing comes to your mind, I'm sorry, but I would recommend to lie. And the reason is because they don't care. Honestly, if you're telling the truth, nobody cares if this is a real piece of advice. If it's not, nobody cares if you believe in this, what your opinion is. This does not matter. It really, truly doesn't matter. All the examiner cares about is your English. How well can you defend your point? How well can you string sentences together? How well can you speak? So it really, really, really does not matter if you believe in this, if whatever thing you're talking about actually happened, if this is your opinion, doesn't matter. Your opinion, the way you speak matters. So that is the only thing that matters. So again, think fast. If you can't think of an example, make one up. It's okay. Just make sure that you answer all of the points on the paper, or try to address all of them. So again, thank you guys for joining. These are some of the tips that I was talking about today. I'm going to go over them really quickly for the people who just joined. The first one is to be prepared. Make sure that you practice a lot, and the more you practice, the easier this will become. The second one, which applies to all of our all speakers of English, is to follow the structure of English. Don't state your main idea last. Make sure you stated the first thing. So state your main idea, then an example, then another example, and never go on to off topic. So it's very important that you give examples that are relevant and that all of your sentences connect. Stay current, because this is how you get examples. Watch the news, read. This will improve your vocabulary and also will help you expand your knowledge, give you more ideas, and help you think fast, help you come up with these ideas when maybe you're caught off guard. Use good English. Vary your sentences. Use synonyms. Don't use the same words over and over again, because this shows the examiner and everyone that your command of English is much higher. Use transition words like eventually, finally, moreover, things like that. These are very useful to learn. Use them. The examiner would like that a lot. Use idioms. Don't overuse idioms, because it will sound strange. And lastly, keep in mind to use your voice. Be confident. Do not shy. It's your time to shine. Be happy. You're speaking to a person. They want to hear your thoughts. It's great. Don't forget to think fast, and just kind of, it might seem crazy, but enjoy it. Enjoy the opportunity that you have to practice your English, to use your English. So it's your time, like I said, to shine. So that's it for today. Thank you guys for watching us, for joining our class today. It's always exciting. It's always a fun Saturday when I get to talk to you guys. Thank you again. If you found that this was useful, if you know anyone who's taking the IELTS or any other test, if you know anyone who is a little bit shy and is afraid of speaking, please share this lesson with them. I think it was very beneficial. Again, thank you guys so much. Don't forget to join our social media classes, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful Saturday or Sunday or weekend. For us, it's Saturday afternoon. I know for other people, it's Saturday evening. So again, thank you guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.